So I wanted to talk about the experience versus education debate. And I think it's actually a non-debate, to be honest, if you look to see at why we have actually education in this world. So I put out this TikTok, whatever, and people responded with a lot of hate about the fact of education actually matters. And a lot of people did not like the comment or like the scenario that education actually does matter. And a lot of people rely on experience. And to me, it makes really no sense if you logically think about that. If you truly believed that experience was the only thing that mattered, then we should get rid of education altogether. We should not just get rid of higher education, college and university, but get rid of literacy, get rid of primary education, and go back to when we were just based on experience and just doing an apprentice model where we were not learning about we weren't learning about languages, we weren't learning about anything um, in any sort of capacity, and just go to an apprentice model. And the problem with that model, if you go far enough and you remove all education altogether, all public education, is that it penalizes dramatically those that have the resources to get access to a good apprentice. Right, so that's essentially all education is taking an apprentice and aggregating across apprentices, finding the best possible way that you can execute on some sort of skill across these apprentices, writing it down, and telling other people about this model, this new idea that an apprentice learned, and everybody across the board gets access to that. Now you can sort of argue the private public, education and all that kind of stuff debate, but it's essentially what we're trying to do when you educate people, is taking the best practices and telling everybody what those best practices are across the board. Now you can argue about how to get to those best practices and all that kind of stuff, that whole debate. But the basic model is that if you take it back all the way to even a kindergarten education, and that's where you would have started at, right? Would have been, what did they call it, grammar school or something along those lines? I can't remember what exactly it was called way back a long time ago, where you would just get essentially, a year's worth of education. Well, we realized that that was actually really effective. People actually learn things. And, they're learning about language, and they're learning about etiquette, and they're learning all sorts of different stuff, how to work together. And so we decided, well, let's make this an extra year. And so instead of a kindergarten education, then they get, kindergarten plus grade one. And then it grew and grew until, and until we now have this sort of larger education model that we have right now. But, I really want you to think about that there's not really even a debate in terms of, does education actually have an impact in this world? And it's hard to measure that. It's extremely hard to measure it. The best way that I've seen measured it, I think it was Josh Krieger. I think he won the Nobel Prize this year in economics, or the economics version of it. And I think the model was looking at dropouts, comparing dropouts in in one grade, and looking to see, did they get an extra few more weeks compared to the other dropouts of the same grade that didn't get those many weeks, and did it have an impact on the performance of their life? I think that's what the paper was saying. And yeah, I mean, it does have, it has an impact, right? Like all of these things, it's pretty much undebatable in terms of does it have an impact. If you are a social scientist and you're not controlling for education in any social science study, you will not get it published. It will not, it just will not fly because it correlates so strongly with so many different things that are basically positive. So we have to sort of have a positive impact on society, whatever that looks like. So we have to take a step back and really assess that debate a little bit more and really thought-provokingly, instead of just saying education doesn't matter. We know it matters. What you're getting educated on, well, that's a different thing. That's something that's a little bit more refined. And maybe we have to have a conversation about what it is that you should be getting an education in. And now, even in that area, there's debate about basic versus applied, and that sort of more applied education versus more basic research or science and theory and all that kind of stuff. Those provide, in general, different returns and how long it actually takes. And it's super hard to measure those things. Because the returns are very different in terms of the returns that you're going to get. Generally, the model across the social sciences is that the more theoretical, the more abstract, the more likely that you're going to have these long-run benefits, but they're very risky, very uncertain. But the long-run benefits tend to be much larger than more applied. So what we need to think about is balancing to what degree that we have, to what extent do we want something that's more immediate, more practical, versus more longer term. And I think that there is a discussion to be made about balancing those and how much we want in society and who gets access to that and all that kind of stuff. But, we need to stop having this debate about whether education matters. It does. It has an enormous impact. Literacy, numeracy, and, I don't know what you call it, social interaction, the ability to interact with other people, those have enormous impacts on career prospects, on virtually everything. So we just have to accept that component of it, but then move the debate, move the story to what is it that we really want to promote, and it's not as clear as one would think. And what is it that we want to, not promote, and it's not as clear as what you think. So that's where I want to end this discussion, and just tell you to really stop and think. And one way to sort of leverage this is do these sort of ideal thought experiments, or doing these thought experiments, right? Like, okay, if you believe this, what is the extreme version of what you're saying? Let's just take this out to the extreme and see if it holds. And if you could take it out to the extreme, and if it still holds, then there's some justification there. But in general, not a lot of things can be taken to the extreme like that, and not and still hold up, unless it's tried and true, and it's the same old boring advice that you hear that everybody else gets upset about. It's the same boring advice that educators will tell you. That's all I wanted to say with this. We're not in it to, educators and scientists and researchers are not in it to, well, and the majority of us are not in it to be evil and, connive something. I guess there are some people that will do that, but, for the most part, there's some pretty solid evidence there. And we want to encourage everybody to leverage some of that solid evidence. So with that, I want to talk about. Um, have a good day, and leave me some comments if you like this one.